Okay.
Hello. Hello. This is Jim Spohrer, and I'm recording this meeting, and I'm going to share my presentation, and I hope we can, I'll record this and share it with everybody as well. So let me just share my screen, and we'll get started. Okay. And good. So let me see, participants. Okay, so can you see my screen okay?
Yes, of course.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Very good. So, hey, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I don't know why I couldn't join the Zoom appropriately, but I'm glad my Zoom works, and I can see there's a good number of people joining. And I'm getting a call from, let me just take this. Oops, I have to decline it because otherwise I'll lose this session. So let me get started. Let me just, if it's all right, I'll just get started. I'm recording this, and thank you all for joining. I'm Jim Spohrer. I'm the director of the Cognitive Open Tech Group at IBM, and I would just like to thank Professor Fisher for the invitation to present to you all today. And this is my brief bio. And by the way, I always upload all my presentations to SlideShare. So this presentation is already uploaded to slideshare.net/Spohrer. Just a little bit about my background. I've studied natural systems at MIT. I've studied cognitive systems and artificial intelligence at Yale, and I studied service systems at IBM. And the reason I'm interested in service is because of a large part of IBM's revenue comes from service. I also lead the Center for Open Source Data and AI Technologies at IBM. And my background is artificial intelligence. And the intersection between service science and artificial intelligence is trust. We can't have good service systems and service interactions without trust, and we can't adopt artificial intelligence unless we have trust. So in today's talk, I'm going to cover just very quickly some items about the future of artificial intelligence. And I'm going to give several different perspectives on this very quickly. I apologize. I realize English is probably a second language to most of you on the phone, and I do tend to speak quickly. If I do speak too quickly, I'll just ask, please come off mute one person or put something in the chat. I am able to monitor the chat simultaneously and give the talk. So put something in the chat or just say, hey, please slow down, Jim, or could you say that again? I really apologize if I speak too fast. My natural speaking style is pretty fast. So I'll cover multiple topics here today, and let's just dive in. So as a result of the pandemic, we're seeing an increase in the use of artificial intelligence and robots. It's really accelerating. The pandemic has accelerated our journey online. It's accelerated the adoption of artificial intelligence. Here in the US, I'm seeing robots in retail stores like Lowe's. I'm seeing telepresence robots when I go to San Francisco, which isn't far from where I live. The police department actually has security robots that are on the street. They're telepresence robots. They're operated by a person. And more and more people are getting robots in their home for for various functions. So definitely the pandemic is accelerating things. And part of this acceleration is really a shift to these online platforms. More and more people are doing work, labor online platforms, as well as there's capital platforms as well. Labor platforms are like Uber for car services, and capital platforms are things like eBay and other places where you can sell goods. There's many examples of both of these. And what we're seeing is a transition of workers who are becoming what we call T-shaped learners or earners because they're earning on these platforms. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but the notion of a T-shaped person is what we look for at IBM, someone who has breadth, who understands many disciplines, many industry sectors, many cultures, but is deep in one. So perhaps you'd be deep in computer science and deep in retail and deep in, the U.S. culture, or maybe, you're deep in marketing and your sector is finance and your culture is, from Kazakhstan. So many different IBMers have this T-shaped profile, and these are the references about the acceleration that the pandemic is causing. And again, my slides are on SlideShare, so if you're interested, just go on SlideShare. You can get them, and I hope that'll be of interest to you. Now let's talk about two disciplines. Artificial intelligence is about a 70-year-old discipline, and it's about generations of machines getting smarter and smarter, more and more capable. And service science, which I helped start, is about transformation. It's about responsible entities. It's about people. It's about businesses. It's about governments that are becoming more and more responsible. And this is about generations of people. So I'm not going to go through service science in a great deal because I think most of you here are interested in artificial intelligence, but I did include a few slides for you if you want to learn more about service science, and I'd be happy to hear from people who are interested in service science. Now, for the future of artificial intelligence, these are the questions that I'm going to go through very quickly. And I think the most important thing to understand about artificial intelligence, and I'll also be talking about intelligence augmentation, that's IA. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the timeline. How do we know when we'll be able to solve artificial intelligence and intelligence augmentation? But there's other questions I'll answer as well in this list. So this is probably the most complex slide in my talk. So I hope you all understand it because this is my version of Moore's Law. And if you look at the top horizontal line, it's $1 trillion. The next line is a billion, a million, 1,000, $1. And you can see the timeline on the bottom from 1960 all the way out to 2080. Here we are in 2021. We're right here. Okay? Now, the diagonal lines are the number of instructions per second that computers can do and how much it costs to do a particular number of instructions per second. So for example, when I was growing up in the 1960s, IBM mainframes could only do 1,000 instructions per second. Today, for $1,000, you can buy a computer that can do 1 million instructions per second. But guess what? The best estimates are our brains are exascale. That's 1 billion instructions per second. 1 billion, think of that. So for $1,000 today, we can buy 1 million instructions per second, a lot more than we could in the 1960s. But it doesn't look like we get to, if Moore's Law continues, we don't get to 1 billion instructions per second at $1,000 till 2060. So if somebody says to me, hey, Jim, when is artificial intelligence going to be, like it is, more like it is in the movies? I say, well, it's probably around 2060 to 2080, because that's when for $1,000, we can get the computing power of the brain. Now, as you can see, people are concerned because, well, let me say one more thing about this chart. So does anybody know the fastest computer in the world today? It's the Summit supercomputer. IBM built it for our Oak Ridge National Labs. It does 200 petascale, which is 200 million billion instructions per second. That's the fastest computer in the world, built by IBM. It's got NVIDIA GPUs, it's got our power systems in it. That's only 1/5 of the computing power of the human brain. And it runs on 13 megawatts of power. So you can see, to get to 2060, where we have, you know, your brain runs on 20 watts of power. So this is a very complex slide, but it does summarize very, very well Moore's law in the past. And if Moore's law continues, by about 2060, we should have, for $1,000, you should be able to buy a computer that has as many instructions per second as a human brain. Does that mean it'll be intelligent? Well, we have to do a lot of other things as well. But the concern people have is the cost of a digital worker is going down. And you can see most people's income is between $1,000 and $1 million. This blue line right in here is a person's average annual salary. And you can see as we get computers that, you know, the cost of a digital worker is going to be going down, and people are worried about this because they're worried about job loss. But we'll examine that in this talk. But I think the interesting thing is, because we're going to be getting our, you know, our smartphone apps are going to be growing up to become digital workers, and I'm sure you all have, most of you have smartphones. I imagine you all have smartphones. Think about each of your apps. I use about 100 apps. Think about your apps being workers that you command. So you're going to be able to get a lot more done. You know, if you're an entrepreneur and you can command 10 digital workers, 100 digital workers, you're going to be able to get a lot more done. So the way I like to look at this, which is more positive view, is that the GDP, the gross domestic product of countries, is going to go way up. The gross domestic product of employees is going to go way up. Every person is going to have like an army of digital workers working for them. So we're going to expect more from responsible entities in the future, which is where it connects back to service science. But computing power alone isn't all you need. You need algorithms, you need data. And so this chart right here is another complex chart, maybe not as complex as the last one, but it does have a URL here called paperswithcode.com. If you want to know what the state of the art of artificial intelligence is, all you have to do is go to this website, paperswithcode.com, SOTA, which stands for State of the Art. So every week they refresh it with what are the latest papers about the advancements in artificial intelligence. And what I do, and my team does at IBM, is we look at leaderboards. And a leaderboard is just a ranking of who's best. Who's best at pattern recognition for speech, images, and translation. And these are hyperlinks. If you download my presentation, it's already up on the web. This talk today, all these slides are already up on the web, slideshare.net/or you can download it. You can put it on your smartphone and follow along if you want. But you can see, you know, all of these leaderboards you can go to, and you can see who's got the best algorithm, who's got the best AI for solving this type of problem. And here we are around 2021. We're still in the perceiving the world. We have to learn from labeled training data. Massive amounts of training data are required to build these AI models. But soon we're going to be transitioning into learning by watching and reading. Imagine a computer that can learn by watching and reading. That's kind of like we people do, right? Right now we have to give them, you know, lots and lots of training data, and they churn on GPUs, and they can do simple pattern recognition type tasks. But, you know, we're getting into the developed cognition stage. Now, you could say memory. Oh, computers, don't they have a fantastic memory? Don't they never forget? Well, sort of. You know, a computer, you can put Wikipedia in it, and then you've got all the facts, basic facts about the world, more than maybe a person does. But our memories are different. We have a human episodic memory, so we can form generalizations. We can remember our childhood. We can understand. Our memory is very, very different, much more sophisticated than computer memory. And reasoning. Oh, can't computers solve logical problems? Yes, they can solve 10 million constraint problems, but they don't do reasoning like you and I do. They don't have common sense reasoning. And common sense reasoning is different in Kazakhstan than it is in the US, than it is in China, than it is in Japan. As we grow up in our cultures, it's all different. No computer has the kind of human-like episodic memory that we have, or the common sense reasoning. But by about 2027, if Moore's law continues, if the papers with code, if the algorithms continue, we might be able to see systems that have human-like memory systems and common sense reasoning capabilities. But that's not enough. The next level is to build relationships. My pet dog has better social interaction skills than any artificial intelligence on this planet. My pet dog knows how I'm feeling and responds appropriately. So social interactions, but there are leaderboards out there that you can check to see what the state of the art in social interactions. Fluent conversation, wonderful chatbots in the world. However, that's not fluent conversation. That's not like the conversation that we can have. And there's leaderboards out there for that. And then eventually, and notice we're shifting the learning modes from learning by watching and reading here, which we will get to when they have human-like memory and common sense reasoning capabilities, to learning by doing and being responsible. And this is when you start getting into more of the types of AI that you see in the science fiction movies, where you've got an artificial intelligence that can fill a role. And I'll just say, there's leaderboards out there for debating. Why do we care about debating artificial intelligence systems that can debate? Well, because if you want a collaborator, you don't want your collaborator to agree with you all the time. The best collaborators are the ones that disagree, and you argue and you get the idea to be better. And so we want AI systems that know how to debate. Now, you'll notice over here, there's this term, cognitive mediator or mediator. What is a mediator? Well, eventually, you can see around 2039, we get AI systems that can negotiate as well as people. And a cognitive mediator is an artificial intelligence that you would trust to negotiate something on your behalf. For example, my wife, she got her Yale law degree while I was getting my artificial intelligence computer science degree at Yale, and she can negotiate much better than I can. She's trained as a lawyer. She knows how to negotiate. So whenever I have something important that I need negotiated, I ask my wife, Diane, I say, hey, won't you negotiate this for me? Because you're better at it. Imagine the day when you would trust your artificial intelligence enough to negotiate something on your behalf. That's what a cognitive mediator is. So in addition to the computing power that we saw back here, oops, let me go back. In addition to the using Moore's law to project when computers will be able to do a billion exascale $1,000, we can also use the data from leaderboards and papers with code to estimate when we will have the kind of artificial intelligence that I think we all want, which is this kind of digital workers who can augment our intelligence. But who's winning? So this chart right here shows that this red line is, if you look at artificial intelligence publications, China dominates in publications of artificial intelligence in top journals. This is the US, this is Europe and Japan. If you look at companies, Microsoft has led for publications in artificial intelligence. But this red line is Google catching up. Solidly in third place is IBM. And if you look at patents, though, for artificial intelligence, you can see IBM dominates. IBM has been the #1 company in the world for over 28 years in a row for patents. And now, of course, we're getting all kinds of patents on quantum computers. If you look at robots per capita by country, this is another indication of the progress of artificial intelligence in our world. South Korea is the country that has the most industrial robots per capita. China, huge population, so not surprisingly, they're actually below the world average for robots per capita. I gave a talk to some folks from Denmark earlier this week, and Denmark is actually number 5 on the list. So the Nordic countries have a lot of robots per capita. And it turns out, to get the benefit of artificial intelligence, it's not just about technological progress, it's also about social progress. Certain countries have better social guarantees than others. So if your citizens, if your workers aren't worried about losing their job, because there's reskilling and upskilling programs that the government provides, then there's less barriers to the adoption of artificial intelligence and robots and getting the benefits of those in your economy. So it's like you got to solve the technical issues, but you've also got to solve the social issues that go along with it. And this is where service science comes in, because it looks at the transformation of societies. This is a report that Accenture did a few years ago that looks at GDP growth per country, and you can see it's fantastic GDP growth. But again, you got to have the technology. We still don't have it. There's decades to go before we have the kind of artificial intelligence that I think we all want. You know, you got to have the social policies so that it can get integrated into your industry and society. The benefits of artificial intelligence are going to be access to expertise. You're going to have insanely great labor productivity, as we've seen with the GDP per capita. And you're also going to be able to make better choices, because especially when we get into the cognitive mediator era, your AI will know you. I know this sounds hard to believe, but in some ways better than you know yourself, because your AI will be able to track every heartbeat, every breath, everything that you eat, all the reactions that you have. And so in some ways, everybody that you meet, right? Imagine a system that has like a computer-like memory, but also has a human-like episodic memory to make generalizations and common sense reasoning. So these are the benefits: insanely great labor productivity, insanely great collaboration with others. We can, you know, you might be in a room with somebody that has this kind of knowledge and you've got this kind of knowledge, and if you put it together, you can solve this kind of problem. And you might not know it. You might just be enjoying the day, talking about the weather. And it turns out, you know, if you combine your knowledge together, you can cure cancer or something. So with our artificial intelligence, we'll have insanely great collaborations with others. Now, the risks of artificial intelligence, people worry about job loss. I've already talked about that a little bit. And they worry about superintelligence. I'm not worried about either of those, frankly. I'm much more worried about de-skilling. If we become overly reliant on our artificial intelligence, that could be, you know, human laziness leads to de-skilling. That wouldn't be good. And I'm not worried about superintelligence, but I am worried about bad actors. There's many organizations out there that are using artificial intelligence for their own purposes, which may not be helpful, including criminals using artificial intelligence. Now, as amazing as artificial intelligence is, over these coming decades, there's going to be technologies that have a bigger impact on your life. Augmented reality and virtual reality. So many of the younger generation around the world love these virtual worlds, and they're getting more and more realistic. Well, guess what? That's the future of work. In the pandemic society, we're already doing our work online. So imagine even more robust virtual and augmented reality systems to allow work. So the game worlds are going to grow up, and they're going to be a fabulous way to collect data. And artificial intelligence is data collection and analysis. So much smarter artificial intelligence when we get more of the work that's in these virtual reality systems. But you got to trust it. So blockchain and security systems are going to be very important for our future. Right now, there's a lot of distrust about technology, distrust of organizations. So we've got to have more accountability, and blockchain and security systems can give us that. And advanced materials and energy systems. I'll talk more about this, but and biotechnology. I don't even have that on the slide. So there's other technologies that are going to have a huge impact on our quality of life besides artificial intelligence over the next few years. So this is to me the most important slide in the whole deck. I told you about the complex one, the Moore's Law one, which allows us to predict artificial intelligence future if Moore's Law continues. This slide is about the best way to predict the future is to inspire the next generation of students to build it better. And in about, by 2035, cars will drive themselves. That's going to be a huge change in society. It's not going to be next year. You know, in spite of what Elon Musk says, it's not just the technology, and the technology has a lot of edge cases to get right still, but it's all the social It's all the social policy stuff. And so it's going to be another, 15 years or so. But in 15 years, all that stuff will be worked through. It'll be safer. It'll be more efficient to have driverless vehicles. Water, no water shortages by 2035, because guess what? Singapore already recycles 99% of its water, and all major cities will shift to this as the cost of water filtration goes down. So we'll start using our resources more efficiently. Manufacturing is back local again. 200 years ago, everything was manufactured within practically a 200-mile radius. Most major things that you would use in your life. Now, lots of things are produced in China. But manufacturing comes local again by 2035 because of robotics, 3D printing. Energy, no energy shortages by 2035 because of 3 different technologies, including artificial leaf, geothermal is getting more distributed, and even small-scale nuclear systems are going to solve all the world's energy needs. Construction, the Broad Group in China can already build a 30-story building in 15 days and uses advanced materials. So imagine the ability to build better, safer, earthquake-resistant buildings. I've explained information communication technology, how smart computers will be in 2035 and how they'll augment us. Retail will go social. Finance will go crowdfunded. Healthcare, all robotic surgery, 3D printed organs. Education will look radically different. It'll be more like a team sport of entrepreneurs, because you can imagine little children, think of the smartphone today and how powerful that is. Imagine little children in 15 years, and we've been working on this at IBM, where we've got like a smartphone with a magnifying lens that you can hold it over pond water and see the microorganisms in the pond water. Imagine a little kids out on their backyard, and they put a little sample in, and their smartphone or their learning tablet, whatever it'll be secure, safe for kids. Say, hey, Johnny, I've just identified a new species in this sample. We'll name it after you, and I've written a short scientific paper about the discovery and sent it in your name. And Johnny goes, thank you, little my assistant. So you don't want to have kids with that kind of superpower just learning addition. We've got to think of a world where we're collaborating and trusting and doing greater things together. And I know it's hard to believe, but even government works better by 2035 because of ideally we start using better decision techniques that allow greater benefits than the decision techniques that we're currently using today. And a lot of that's coming out of game theory and advanced decision system mathematics. So this is the artificial leaf. It's Harvard, MIT, Caltech, others are working on it. That's going to help solve our energy needs. Imagine putting a little chip in sewage water, and it creates hydrogen and oxygen and purifies the water and self-cleans itself. Some people are worried about the carbon dioxide in the air. I am too, climate change. But VTT in Finland has developed a system that pulls the carbon dioxide out of the air and creates protein. They're already feeding animals with this capability. I'm getting old. I turned 65 in January this year, so I'm getting up there. And I want my exoskeleton as I get older. I don't want to fall over and break a bone. So I think this is where energy and material science can really help us be safer and live healthier, more productive lives. So, as I mentioned, I'm 65 years old. I was conceived in 1955, and this is the phone that was on the wall in the farmhouse in Maine that I grew up in. The farm was an apple orchard. We had chickens, cows, apples. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the species apples originated in Kazakhstan some millions of years ago. So I definitely want to visit someday and see your apple trees. When I got to MIT, this was the phone that was on my desk in my dorm room. It's a rotary phone. A lot of kids don't even know how to use a rotary phone anymore today. When I got to Silicon Valley, this was my first cell phone. It was a Nokia phone. Of course, now I have my iPhone. I worked at Apple for 10 years. What will I have by 2035? If I'm lucky enough to make it to 80? And what would I have if I'm lucky enough to make it to 99, 100? What would I have by 2055? This is the first program I wrote in 1972 in my high school. It's on punch cards. It was an IBM key punch machine. When I was leading IBM's Global University Programs around 2012, we gave free access to our Watson AI technology in the cloud to 300,000 faculty and students around the world. So I could do a little bit. I love key punching in my programs, but what you can accomplish today, the building blocks are just getting better and better. And I really want you, especially the students out there, to think about these better building blocks. And I hope you're inspired to build a better future. I did just want to close, and I'll open it up for questions, with intelligence augmentation. Doug Engelbart was one of my mentors. He's the inventor of the mouse. He really wrote one of the first most important papers on intelligence augmentation in 1962. I was like 7 years old, living in Maine on a farm. But later on, when I got to Silicon Valley, I got to meet him. He became my mentor. We worked on various papers about intelligence augmentation. He talked about the human system and the tool system. And even before Doug, there was Vannevar Bush in 1945 wrote about intelligence augmentation. Licklider in 1960 also wrote about it. In fact, they created funding programs that allowed Doug to do the research he did. And there's a lot of different work out there on intelligence augmentation. When I was at Apple, I did work on augmented reality systems, and this is like augmented perception. Imagine glasses that you put on and you can look up at the sky at night and it labels all the stars and planets, or you're looking at a plant and it identifies it, it labels it, or you're a construction expert, instead of looking at blueprints about what's buried under the ground, you put on your augmented reality glasses and it basically shows you the pipes and stuff and everything. So augmented perception is a capability that may come before augmented, yes. Mm-hmm. Do we have to wrap up? Okay. So anyway, the one thing I want to say about augmented intelligence, just to wrap up, and I'll wrap up like in the next 2 minutes, is when I was at Apple, Alan Kay, who's another one of my mentors, and Steve Jobs talked about bicycles for the mind. Why bicycles for the mind? Why not cars? Cars are more powerful. They go faster. They can go further. Think of all the infrastructure that a car needs. A bicycle doesn't need as much infrastructure. And also, when you're driving a car, you're getting weaker because you're not walking. A bicycle makes you stronger. So we need to have augmented intelligence that doesn't make us de-skilled, but makes us more capable. And anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff in this presentation. There's also slides if you're an academic and you want to write some scholarly papers, that would be great. After the pandemic, come visit me at the Almaden Research Center in San Jose, California, and it would be great to host you. We've hosted people from countries all over the world. I'm going to go ahead and stop my talk, and if anybody's got questions, you can put them in the chat or just come off mute. I see Kermit Zaman has his hand raised, so
hello.
Please ask your question.
Hello? Thanks, Dr. Spohrer. Do you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Thanks, Dr. Spohrer. It's fantastic information. Everything is very I loved your story about building better blocks and every kind of it's sometimes very terrific how technology changes our lives, how fast it is changing, and we can't even imagine what's going to happen in the future. So in the next 20 or 30 years. So, and my question is, right now there's a race between the gigantic companies, gigantic IT companies in the Silicon Valley, in particular. The likes of Facebook, IBM, Apple, they're all racing to beat and to become one of the leading companies in developing artificial intelligence. So what is IBM's position in this race? And how do you view and what's the vision in this race for the IBM? Thanks.
Yeah. No, our vision is different from our competitors. Our vision is that your data is your data. A lot of our competitors like to get your data. Your data is my data. We're like, no, your data is your data. We want to protect your data. It's your data. We want to develop AI for augmented intelligence purposes. That's our core goal. And so that differentiates us a little bit from our competitors. But I think, every company is different, but we collaborate a lot. Like in open source and Code, the center I lead, I work with, I've got a call later today with Microsoft and Amazon and NVIDIA and Intel because I'm on the Onyx steering committee, and we collaborate on open source technologies. We use TensorFlow, and we've got committers that help Google with TensorFlow and Kubeflow. So at IBM, we're certainly working in the open source, trying to build the platforms. I'm also TAC chair of the Linux Foundation AI and Data, the Technical Advisory Council chair. So I work with, Baidu, Tencent, the Chinese companies as well. I really believe in open global collaboration to build the infrastructure and a positive vision of what AI and augmented intelligence can be. So that's how I spend my day, is trying to create that positive vision. And we'll collaborate with everybody who shares the ideal that this should be open, transparent, safe, secure, explainable, all of those things that we have to do to get the trust in society to allow us to get the benefits from this technology. Because if we don't get that trust, society will say, no, we don't want that AI. Stop doing that. So we've got to build systems that you trust and you feel good about incorporating into your daily life and society. Thank you for the question, Kermit. Is there, I see some, yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Spohrer, sorry for interrupting you. My name is Anat Siddiqov, and I'm faculty member from KMAP, and we were trying to get you into webinar in that link, which unfortunately worked. Thank you so much for being so, helpful and friendly and sharing your Zoom link with us and with all our students and participants. And if the rest of the audience wouldn't mind, I will read the questions in order they appear. And probably Azamat will ask the question himself. But there was two questions actually before Azamat. One was asked in that webinar, and here is one more. So I will start from the question from that webinar. There was a person who was asking, what kind of changes do you expect for IT industry with the new president?
Well, we will return to science, and I'm so delighted about that. I think the first thing you've already seen is our United States IT industry thrives on brilliant minds from all over the world coming to the U.S. So we're certainly going to change that and get those brilliant minds coming here and welcoming them here from all over the world, because that's core to our new president's values. Arvind Krishna, our IBM, as soon as Joe Biden was elected, he sent him a letter from IBM saying, here's the things we want to do with you from an IBM perspective, and getting the talent from all over the world. Arvind Krishna, our CEO, came from India, right? And so definitely we want to renormalize relationships and collaborations with the world and look together positively about what we can create together. I'm very optimistic. I know I've got some good colleagues who are working with the administration on thinking about, everything from how are we going to use IT to if there's a future pandemic or other existential threats to our society, how are we going to respond better and faster using advanced science and technology. So yeah, I expect a lot of changes. Thanks for that question.
Thank you so much for answering. There is one more question from Izat. Will pandemics be also easily predicted and prevented?
I think they'll be, will certainly, you know, be able to identify them faster. And yes, I think so. I also think, you know, addressing them, you know, wearing masks, staying socially distanced, just being more cautious is also going to help us respond faster in the future. So I don't think it's just technology that's going to allow us to do that better. I think it's just, you know, there's some behavioral policy things that we've learned that we can put into place. So yes, absolutely, I'm optimistic about that. I'm probably the most optimistic person in the world, though. So.
Thank you so much. And the next question is from one of the brightest students, Azamat Kalam. So Azamat, would you please ask question yourself?
Hello, Mr. Spohrer. I hope you're doing well. Good morning to you. I have a question regarding programming because I'm a starting programmer. I'm a second-year student, and I want to increase my programming skills and better upgrade them. And I want to implement AI studies and blockchain. What are some, like, you know, 3 or 2 resources that you would recommend to go and learn AI or systems and blockchain? Thank you.
Okay, very good question. So do you have a GitHub account?
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely, right. So the #1 advice I give everybody is get a GitHub account. And I tell that to people, I tell that to CEOs of companies. I say, oh, you're the CEO of a company, you don't have a GitHub account? Come on, get with it. Seriously, oh, you're an English major, you write poetry. You don't have a GitHub account? Get a GitHub account. But I don't program. I have people that program for me, whatever they say as an excuse. No, get a GitHub account and start searching it. You can find GitHub code that automatically generates Chinese poetry. There's GitHub, you know, it's like Wikipedia, but there's code there. And even if you're not a programmer, you can track it and you can see what's going on in the world of code. There's so many repos that are created every day that it really is the case that everybody's got to have a GitHub account. I think, you know, if you're looking at courses, IBM's data science course, we have it on Coursera. One of the people on my team created that course. It's very good. I came home one day and my youngest son said, Dad, I took that IBM data science course and I loved it, but I got like 3 or 4 things that you can change to make it better. So I definitely take the data science course from Coursera that IBM offers. There's something we call the skills network. If you type in IBM skills network, my IBM colleague from IBM Canada, Leon Katz-Nelson, runs the IBM Skills Network, all free, all kinds of stuff on AI. My team contributes courses to it regularly. There's really no shortage of material. There's some, you know, some people like Fast AI. Fast AI has some wonderful content for data scientists and people who want to be AI programmers. You know, learn Python, learn all the libraries, start some pet projects, build some GitHub repos, look at what's out there. Really, it's I mentor so many students and I just tell them, just, you know, learn how to set goals for yourself and achieve them on schedule, right? It's one thing to be very, very ambitious, but if you can't set a goal and achieve it on schedule, you know, that's the discipline that you have to create is really in anything, whether you're learning programming, artificial intelligence, data science. Learn how to be an active learner, learn how to be positive about when you fail. Oh, I tried to write that and I failed. Well, what did I learn? You know, and let me try it again and maybe I can do it better. You know, setbacks, if you have a positive mindset, the growth mindset can actually be positive. I remember when I was my first job, I was on the job. We built this speech recognition system. I was doing an AI startup in the late 1970s after MIT. And one day I disk crashed and we lost all of our software. been working over a year on this speech recognition system, and we lost it all, and there was no backup. The backup dish wouldn't work. And, you know, for about 5 minutes, we were like, oh my God, we were panicked, you know, heart beating, sweaty. And then in a moment of calm, we said, I bet we can do it a lot faster the second time. And we did it. And within 2 months, we had not only created what we had lost that had taken us a year, but it was better because we had figured things out along the way that make it better. So learn how to set goals, keep a schedule, dramatically, see if you can learn twice as much next week. Well, maybe it'll take you a while, but set goals, achieve them, and don't let setbacks bring you down. You know, think about it and say, well, what did I learn? How can I do it better? How can I go faster and further next time? That's really the best advice I can give. But there's tremendous materials out there. Look at IBM Skills Network.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Asma. Yeah.
So you mean that at least not to be left aside, but at least to become more or less an intermediate user, right? And thank you so much for that. Next question from Mr. Tastenachem.
Good evening, dear colleagues. Good evening, dear professor. I'm so happy that to having such an amazing meeting with you. Professor, actually, I did my master degree in India in data science. Actually, currently, I'm a passive instructor in PICMET University. I'm part-time instructor. Actually, at that, in 2018, there were international AI conference organized by NVIDIA that developers around the globe from IBM, from Google, everyone come, and it was amazing. But there was that one thesis. They said, actually, we technically can adopt a lot of robotics in industry, and we can automate a lot of process. But they say that legalizations and the rules, political, how I can say, rules are abandoning. Especially they give example that populated country like China, India, and after pandemic, I think that we traveled a lot. And I think, what do you think? Government has seen this trouble, and will it boost automation and the robotization of the entire industry? And how I can say, what do you think? Will we see this kind of trend very soon? I think does this pandemic was kind of catalyst for that? Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I definitely, IBM has our Cloud Pack for automation, which is for industrial purposes. You know, if you've got a process, that you want to automate, if you're an industry, that's probably, something you've got to constantly be investing in. But I think you're right about the regulatory stuff. There can be resistance to that. So I'm very big on, well, maybe I can go back to it. I'm very big on robots in the home. And the reason for that is, in your house, if you can make your life easier, that's a good thing. And so I think there could be less resistance for robots in the home. And frankly, that's one of the things when I retire, I want to look at robot farming, robots in the home, things that make life easier inside a home. And if you think about it, let me get back here, and I'm going way back to the beginning. There was a slide I had almost there. Here we go. So you think about robots in the home over here, it's reducing the need for a job. There's even something called FarmBot, which is like a 3D printer you can put in your backyard or front yard that grows your food. If you go to the FarmBot website, there's information about the return on investment. There's also something called SewBot that sews clothing. So I think miniaturization of robots that are in your home that free you up from routine activities that can You know, in Silicon Valley where I live, you know, we have a person that comes in and mows our lawn. Well, what if I had a robot do that? We go to the store to buy food. Well, what if we grew our, you know, more of our own food? So we had to go to the grocery store less. You know, we have to repair clothing or buy new clothing. Well, what if we had robots that, you know, helped us with clothing? You know, so there's maintenance on your house, repairs, you know. So I think one thing that I'm bullish on for the future is robots in the home. I think that is going to run into less social resistance because everybody benefits when they have, and it lowers the need for income because I have to pay the person that mows my lawn. I have to pay for, you know, these things. So if I have robots that do it for me, yeah, maybe I had to pay for the robot, but and also there's a great potential for telepresence robots. So not just like totally autonomous robots that do all these things, but imagine a telerobotic system. You know, maybe I go to Home Depot and I rent a telerobotic system and like a super craftsman comes in and does, you know, sets up the configuration for the robot to do the maintenance on my house. So huge opportunities there that will run into less social resistance. So I'm very, very bullish on home robots. In fact, I'm trying to do some research on that now to look at home robot growth. But thank you for your question. I think absolutely more robots in the future, more robots in homes, and that lowers your need for income, frankly.
Thank you so much. And there are actually two questions which are kind of interrelated. One is from Dr. Fisher, who is our member of the Board of Trustees and who kindly suggested you as a speaker, for which we are tremendously grateful to Dr. Fisher because the talk is so good and so fascinating. And there are two questions actually. One from Dr. Fisher about, like, he's saying he's 80 years old and plans to have many more productive years. And what kind of dog do you have? And seems to be a great idea for him to have a dog who knows how am I feeling. And actually there is a second question which is related to dogs as well. Yeah, Camila is asking, how do you think, is it possible to increase emotional intelligence of AI to the level of normal person, or it is more likely to only emulate it? Thank you so much for your answers.
Yeah, there's a great paper by Huang and Rust in the Journal of Service Research that goes into AI and service systems, and they talk about the feeling economy. They're coming out with a book soon as well. So yeah, definitely that's the possibility, but I would urge you to think about it in terms of bicycles for the mind. So not just robots that are better at interpreting emotions, but how do we, people, become better social emotional skills by having augmented intelligence. And just to give you a concrete example, when I was young, I was an introvert. I was very shy. I like to read a lot of books, but I couldn't talk to other people. When I was trying to talk to somebody, all I was thinking about was how nervous I was. I was thinking about myself instead of them. Hard to communicate when you're not thinking about the person you're talking to and you're too nervous, you know, looking at your shoes. When I was about 30, I changed. I started studying and reading about why am I nervous? What's going on? Why am I this way? How do I change? And I studied and I learned and I practiced and I met my wife who helped me get over a lot of my shyness. So I think with artificial intelligence, yes, we will be able to, you know, build systems that can read our facial expressions and, you know, have an emotional awareness, you know, at a detail that maybe people can't because unless you have augmented perception, you know. So yeah, I definitely believe that's the case. We'll have those systems. But I think the benefit could be, imagine, you know, a young child who's trying to increase their social emotional learning skills, or an executive, you know, somebody who wants to be a CEO. The CEOs I meet, oh my goodness, have they had training in social emotional awareness? You know, unless they're natural. So I think we can all, you know, it's bicycles for the mind. How do we all, when I was young, I was definitely on the autistic spectrum, and I've developed, and how do we help everybody develop? How do we have it bicycles for the minds? How do we use, AI is the greatest tool we've ever invented for getting insights into our humanness. Already with AI, we're discovering, the biases we have in our data, right? We're understanding more about ourselves and how we think. And so I'm really, along with Alan Kay and Steve Jobs, from the early days when I was with them at Apple, believing that we need to create artificial intelligence that ends up being augmented intelligence that makes us, more capable people, more capable of trusting each other, and deserving the trust. And that's why in service science, we study responsible entities, because you trust responsible entities that take responsibility for their actions. And that's really, the direction, the vector I'm on anyway, with AI is for augmented intelligence, including social emotional. Thanks,
Dr. Spohrer,
Professor Fisher.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spohrer. And again, thank you very much for joining us today. And we are very sorry for the inconvenience in the beginning of the lecture. There is one more question from Askarov Daurian. He's asking quite tricky question because we're also faculty members. Will teachers be substituted by robots someday?
Do you want that is one question. There's like 4 questions you should ask about any technology, and it begins with well, there's different ways of asking the questions, but it should start with should we? Is there a need for it? Like, are there, should we do that? Like, are there children that don't have a teacher, but maybe they could have a robot teacher? So if there's children that don't have a teacher and they could have a robot teacher, then maybe the answer to should we is yes. Then the next question is, can we? Do we have the technical ability to do it? And then the third question is, may we? We should do it, we can do it. May we do it? Because, maybe the authority says no. They've got other reasons why it's not safe or it shouldn't be done. And then the last is, will we? Will we prioritize it over all the many things that we should and can and may do? Is it high enough that we invest to actually create it? I do believe that teachers actually, let me go to that slide in my presentation. By the way, my presentation has a lot of slides I didn't get to, so you might find them of interest here. Let me go here. I think, yes, there will be robot teachers because probably we should and can do that. But what about teachers? Let's say I want to be the greatest teacher in the world. What if I want to be Socrates? I want to be the Socrates of the world. How will artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence help me become Socrates? That's a good goal. So I don't think a teacher that says, I want to teach the way I teach now and forever, just, leave me alone, don't take away my job, I want to teach this way. That teacher, there's probably robots that are going to be able to do the job better than that teacher. But if there's a teacher that aspires to be the greatest teacher and works to always improve their skills, maybe the teacher, I know the great teachers of the 1700s, a lot of them wanted one student. They wanted some very, very wealthy person to hire them to teach their one child. So there's lots of different ways to think about how, as a teacher, I would develop or have aspirations to be a human teacher that would be a great human teacher. Equally, I can imagine companies that would say, we see a market opportunity for creating robot teachers. But maybe to conclude, this is a way to think about it. So I've traveled all over the world for IBM. This last year with the pandemic, I didn't travel to any country, but I've traveled to over 45 countries in the world for IBM while I've been working for IBM 22 years. And, you land at the airport in the country, you get into a taxi to go to your hotel, and the taxi cab drivers always like to talk, and they amazingly know English, it seems, everywhere in the world. And I get in the taxi, and the taxi cab driver makes eye contact with me, and usually it starts with, "So where are you from?" And I say, "California." And the taxi driver says, "Oh, California, I've been there, I liked it, or I want to go there, it sounds like a beautiful place," or whatever. And then I say, "Yeah, I work for a technology company in Silicon Valley." He goes, "Oh, technology, it's great, I've got my smartphone, it's improved my life, blah, 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 blah." The taxi drivers like to talk, so you usually just let them talk. But then I always do my experiment, because I'm a scientist, I like to do experiments. So I say, "Well, you know, something strange happened to me the other day when I was driving to work." "Oh, what was that?" And I said, "Well, you know, I was driving along and then this car passed me and I looked over and the driver was reading the newspaper. It was one of those driverless cars. What do you think about that?" And I'm asking a taxi driver from all over the world. I'm gathering my data points, and it's amazing. 50% of them, half, not all, 50% of them say, "Oh, that's horrible. That's going to put me out of a job. You crazy people in technology in California, you're going to ruin my income." And 50% say, "Oh, that's wonderful. Someday I'll have a fleet of taxis going all over the city, and I'll be at home with my family drinking my coffee in the morning, and I'll be rich." What's the difference? What's the difference? And teachers the same. What's the difference? If you want to define yourself in terms of the way you do your job today, yes, you have something to worry about. If you can imagine how you use that capability and your knowledge as a taxi driver or a teacher to do something even more wonderful, if you expand your imagination, then it's a great thing. So I think as we move into these next 2 decades and use artificial intelligence as a powerful tool for understanding ourselves, we really have to develop, as Arvind Krishna said in his letter to Joe Biden, we have to change the skills. We have to give people a positive mindset about change. We have to make sure that they don't define themselves so narrowly that they see this as a threat, but define themselves more broadly as responsible entities co-creating value with others to see the opportunity. That's how I look at the world. I mean, I realize there's other views that are equally valid, but that's why I'm so optimistic, is because I see this capabilities as allowing us to do amazing things. Poverty, why can't we eliminate poverty? Hunger, why can't we eliminate hunger? If we imagine it, we can. We will have the capability to do that. So things that have been problems for decades, centuries, millennia, with the right technological capabilities, with the right mindset about how to solve them, I believe many of them can be solved. So I'm very optimistic. And yes, it will be robot teachers.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Spohrer. Really great answer. To think a lot about that. So we have one more question from one of our students, Aidana Shamotova. She's first of all thanking you for the very informative session, and she's having the question: how soon will artificial intelligence be applied in education healthcare systems in Kazakhstan? How, like in what ways, and which are the leading countries that are successfully using artificial intelligence in healthcare and education?
Yeah, I really do look to the Nordic countries like Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway. I think they have the right social policies, so they tend to progress pretty rapidly. Certainly the US has it in niches. China has, Japan. I think it's you know, I think once we get more AI in the home, that's going to spread faster. Things that are at the consumer level tend to spread faster. So I believe, you know, if you look at my timeline, I think 2035 is going to be pretty important. So keep your eye on 2035 and look at that roadmap, you know, back to, I think it was Osmit's question about where can I learn skills. Look at the papers with code and the SOTA, the state of the art. Definitely look at that. And I'm sure you'll have, you know, better AI systems in Kazakhstan as you, you know, you, the one who asked that question. Sorry, I don't see your name on the screen, but you know, the best way to predict the future is to inspire the next generation to build it better. So if you think that's important, study hard, set goals, learn how to achieve goals, learn how to learn faster, and become part of that. You know, make that happen in Kazakhstan. And I'll come visit and look at your apple tree someday and say good job.
Thank you, Dr. Spohrer. There is very interesting question from one of our participants, Bhagwan. He's mentioning that you didn't mention sport, what future it expects. And his question is, let's imagine that there are two basketball clubs, and one of them employs robots as players, and other basketball club that employs humans as players. In your opinion, who would win in this matchup? I'm interested in this because I believe that in the future, robots would be able to replace human beings in entertainment sports, such as basketball in the US. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the beauty of the world, diversity, right? There'll be basketball teams with people because there's people who want to play better basketball, right? That's a good goal, is to become a, you know, the next great player in basketball. And then there'll be people who, you know, they like building robots that play basketball. I don't, you know, the have the robots play the people, you know, that was the early days of IBM. We did chess, a chess computer versus the, you know, Kasparov in 1997, and our IBM computer beat Kasparov. That was a competition, man versus machine. So in the early days, yeah, because computers are dumb still. So we try to see, can a computer be as good as a person? You know, and then Jeopardy, it was like, can we build a computer that can answer all the questions from Wikipedia, you know, Jeopardy game show, better than a person? Yeah. We've realized, okay, that's not the way to look at it anymore. So the debater technology, we're actually saying, if we give the debater technology to both sides of a debating team, can they have a better debate? And can the audience participate in the debate better? Can we get a sense of the audience? So I think, you know, you're right. There'll be human basketball players. There'll be robot basketball players. Will you have robot versus human? In terms of energy, you know, people are much more efficient energy-wise, but eventually that won't be the case. I would say, just like in chess, artificial intelligence that's played chess has led to an increase in the ability of human chess players to play better games of chess. Clearly, you know, AlphaGo 0 can beat any human in chess, and it evolved the knowledge, you know, basically from scratch over a couple weeks. So definitely we can build computer learning systems for specific tasks that can learn it and play it better than people. I don't think that's a interesting thing anymore. It's kind of like, okay, we've shown that we can build technological systems that can perform better on any particular task than people. So, okay, done. Now what's interesting? Can we make the human performance better? Can we make the machine performance more interesting? But yeah, thank you for that question. It's an interesting one. I think about it a lot. I think about stuff like that a lot too, because I think there's a lot of money to be made, frankly, in sports. Because, you know, that exoskeleton, remember the slide I had on exoskeleton? There's going to be a huge market for that. You know, if you have like a skin diver suit that you can put on when you get old, and there's a lot of studies that show people die when they fall over, break a bone, they end up going into the hospital, they're old, they're socially isolated, all the people they know have passed away, so they just kind of give up and die because they broke a bone and had to go into a hospital and get socially isolated. So having an exoskeleton that keeps me healthier longer is something I'm definitely interested in. But imagine I want to learn how to play golf. I don't, but imagine I did. You know, having a suit that would watch my swing and help me get my muscles trained to do it just right. Or if I wanted to play basketball and I had a suit that helped me learn how to jump higher. And one thing I do want to do is do pull-ups. I can't do a pull-up anymore. When I was a kid, I could bang out the pull-ups. Now I weigh too much and my arms aren't strong enough. So how do I learn to do pull-ups? So I've got an apple tree in my backyard here in Silicon Valley, and I hang from the branch and I lower myself down slowly. It's called negatives. So I'm working on my negatives. What if I had a bodysuit, that helped me do my negatives? That's the kind of stuff I like to think about, is not just how do we have augmented intelligence for academic things, but how do we have augmented physical strength and muscular abilities, and let's say I want to become a martial artist, how would I have a bodysuit that would train me to do that stuff? There's a fantastic book, by the way, called Diamond Age. I like science fiction, so go out and read Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson, and he's got a robot teacher book it's a fantastic story. I think you'll like it. But thanks for that question. That's a fun one. I like to think about that stuff as well.
Dr. Spohrer, there are so many different interesting questions. The topic looks like very, very hot and interesting. And actually, there were a few questions, I believe, that you in some way already answered that about artificial intelligence and trying the ability of artificial intelligence to raise specifically kind of human side and things. But I believe there are two more interesting questions. There is one from Sabina, who is asking, many companies collapsed due to their own approaches during pandemic. Do you think that one day robots can take top positions in companies in order to avoid this type of mistakes and manage companies effectively? And then there is one more very interesting question after you answer this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, the short answer to that one is, I think it was McKinsey did some studies on AI for C-level executives. In fact, I think they had a provocative title, Will a robot be your next boss? So go out and read that. It was an okay article. I mean, I learned a little bit by reading it, and it presented an interesting perspective. But yeah, I think, I think that we will be able to make dramatically better decisions. And I think in the future, the distinction between an employee and a customer kind of disappears. Because if we're all entrepreneurs and we all have 100 digital workers working for us and we all have robots at home, so our cost of living goes down dramatically, why do you work in a big organization like IBM? 50, 60 years in the future. You do it because you believe in the purpose of the company. So I think companies are going to have a higher purpose than just the commercial purposes they have today. They're going to actually have to have a purpose that not only am I delivering a service to my customers, and the distinction between my employees and customers blurs, I've got to have something that's making the planet better. I've got to have something that's making quality of life better. And so I think that higher purpose in the future is going to be compatible with artificial intelligence helping us make better decisions. And just like I will have a cognitive mediator, the Jim Spohrer cognitive mediator that helps negotiate on my behalf, companies will have AIs. So there'll be an IBM AI that knows IBM better than any employee in the company, better than the CEO. There'll be a United States AI that knows America better than Joe Biden. There'll be AIs for all responsible entities, whether it's a person, a business, or a country. So yeah, absolutely. I think, we're going to be at a state where, those decisions can be made in a better way. And this is why I'm saying even government gets better, because when you have the right game theory, when you have the right goals, things become interesting. And I do think it's about, as we all get more superpowers, right? When I was born in 1956, there were no satellites circling the Earth other than the moon, natural satellites. But Sputnik hadn't even been launched when I was born. And to get Sputnik up and put a person on the moon like the U.S. did, Russia, Soviet Union put Sputnik up, and U.S. got to the moon, took a superpower, a whole country, resources of a whole country to do something. And now, Elon Musk, SpaceX, That's a company that's able to do it. Well, you can actually go out and buy books on how to turn your smartphone into a satellite. And rocketry, for about $40,000, you can build a rocket that goes suborbital. So, you know, what took a whole country, took a company, will eventually be something a person can do, an individual person can do. So I think, yeah, we are becoming more capable, and this is why it's important to read Doug Engelbart about, as we become more capable, if we start fighting over the simple goals that we have today of who's going to be the company that delivers this or that, or, you know, the competition is so silly for the small goals. We have to aspire to do bigger things like, you know, cure cancer, or, you know, explore, you know, outer space, or solve poverty. You know, we need bigger goals. If we're going to get more powers and we're using it for the old goals, it seems kind of like a waste of all those powers, right? Seems like if that's what we're fighting over, society will collapse and we'll go back to simple tools for simple goals. I'd rather have, you know, these super powerful tools because we have super powerful goals that would really, you know, make a difference to improve lives and to, you know, increase our knowledge of the world.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
for
you
your
very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Spohrer. And we have one more question from Mohamed Rush. It is about futurism, actually. Do you think that learning machine and artificial intelligence will become conscious in near future, let's say in 10 years from now? Thank you in advance.
Oh, what a great question. I mean, I've heard this question many times, so I actually went out and started researching consciousness for a while. What is consciousness? And there's some really good work at MIT and various other places on consciousness. I encourage you to go out. I don't have the names of the scientists that are researching it, but MIT and Yale had two of the leaders, places I've been. So I read their papers, and it was just amazing. What is consciousness? I mean, we don't even know. So again, if artificial intelligence gives us insights into what consciousness is, that's pretty fantastic. You know, I don't know if machines will have it someday, because I don't know what it is. I mean, even after reading it all, I get a glimmer of what it is, but I don't think anybody really knows what consciousness is. Even these scientists who are studying it and trying to design experiments to tease out, you know, what it is, I think they're making progress for sure. But I don't think anybody really knows what consciousness is. So to have a machine have consciousness, I don't know. You know, it's a really hard question. I mean, part of me wants to say, oh yeah, anything that a person can do, a machine can do. But that's kind of, that's not a very scientific way, you know, just induction. Well, we can build a machine that does this and a person could do that, you know, inductively, yeah, maybe machines will have consciousness someday, but it's not a very, I don't have confidence that I understand what consciousness is or how a machine would ever have consciousness. And also, you know, there's lots, there's a book by Pierre de Chardin. He was a Jesuit priest. It's called The Phenomena of Man. If you want to understand a very different view of consciousness, read The Phenomena of Man by Pierre de Chardin. It's a classic. It's in every library around the world. He was a Jesuit priest, so when he wrote the book, he couldn't publish it because it was considered a vanity to have a book published while you were alive. It could only be published after he was dead. So it came out after he was dead, became a classic, and it's got a different view of consciousness. You know, he asked the question, are there levels of consciousness, right? So some people associate consciousness with self-awareness, like there's different levels of self-awareness, right? And so, you know, you can study animals and see how self-aware the animal is, how aware it is of itself, and how you can design these studies to see if it's self-awareness. But I don't think self-awareness is consciousness. I think this, intuitively, consciousness is this notion that it's like a TV show and I'm in it. You know, it's like I'm looking at the world and I can touch the world and I can see the world, but how is that possible? It's all, you know, it's neural firings in my brain, but I have this perception that I'm in the world. Yeah, I don't know. That's a great, wonderful, hard question that I have. I hope you are interested enough in it that you go out and start researching it and setting goals about what do I want to learn about consciousness next week? What's my goal for the next week? You know, set goals, learn it, get better, get faster at learning about consciousness, and maybe you'll be the person who discovers how to put consciousness into a computer. And I'll come, if I'm alive, and pat you on the back saying, I remember your question, good job.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spohrer. And yeah, unfortunately, we are out of time. So will it be possible to ask like 2 last questions? So we have the question.
No worries. I'm happy to email me and I'll be happy to answer them, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think I put my my LinkedIn profile. I'm always happy to talk to students. I'm sometimes slow when I get a lot of messages, but usually I catch up on the weekend. And yeah, happy to continue a dialogue with anyone who's interested in setting goals and learning. That's how I learn from others. And there's my LinkedIn, so definitely feel free to linkedin.com/in/Spohrer, and thank you for the opportunity. Sorry we had the technical difficulty, but I guess it worked out okay. I'll make sure Allman and others that I send you the recording, so you'll be able to download the recording and you'll have that. So, oh, did I record this though? I hope so.
So yeah, recording is
yes,
on.
it is recording. Yes, we are recording.
So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, the last question is about the advantage of IBM over the maybe like Google and Microsoft regarding the artificial intelligence.
Oh, what an interesting question. I would say one of our advantages is that, you know, I talked about our patent advantage. I think another one of our advantages is we do a lot in open source in a way that we could collaborate with others. I think we do that in a very good way. I would say we have a lot of internal examples of applications of AI that we're working on, so that's good. We acquired Red Hat. They have a lot of open source work that they're doing with AI. Certainly, I think Google and some of the others have the advantage of data sets, certain types of data sets. So they've got far more data than we do, and they use data differently. They consider your data their data. You know, you have to agree if you're using Gmail or any of their free services that, you know, they get to use your data. You know, we don't do that. We don't look at when we do stuff, the company's data, we encrypt it. You know, we have the best encryption and security systems, so we can't, you know, look at their data. It's theirs. We can manipulate it on our computers and with our algorithms and our software, but it's their data. I think that's different. But yeah, I'm more focused, my team, Coday, we focus more on collaborating with Google and Microsoft and Intel and NVIDIA. We're much more, how do we create this capability so that it benefits the world and our customers? And I think we're, you know, we're trusted. A lot of, you know, the banks in the world, the insurance companies in the world, the defense departments of governments around the world, they trust us to be a good partner, a responsible partner that way. But yeah, I hope we all can work together across the companies to collaborate, and I hope countries can collaborate as well. I think there's a lot of artificial intelligence that could save people in natural disasters, migrants moving, natural disasters, human-made disasters. I mean, there's a lot that countries can collaborate on. And I urge open source collaboration, development of shared infrastructure that all countries can use to help in these situations. But thanks for that question. I'm more collaborative than I am competitive in that sense.
Dr. Spohrer, sorry for still keeping you. There are actually two more very interesting questions. One is about blockchain elections. What do you think about blockchain elections? Are they fair, independent, decentralized? And do we have such examples? And the second question is from one of our participants from South Korea. You know, it's 10 p.m. in Almaty, and in South Korea, it's, I believe, 1 a.m. or something. And people are still, you know, watching and listening to. And the person was asking, I don't remember the question in particular, but the person was asking, especially if AI may help developing countries. Oh, let me read it. What do you think how AI could help developing countries in terms of their education and general quality of life when they don't have good access to electricity and computers in general? Do you think AI could make technologically inequality between developed countries and developing countries bigger than right now? So let me quickly summarize. One question first about blockchain elections, and the second one about developing countries, and if the gap between developed and developing countries will be increasing with development of AI. Thank you.
Yeah. So on the blockchain election one, I'd love to see that. I remember I spent a few hours one day trying to research that, and I think I did find a couple startups in Norway that were working on blockchain technology for elections. So again, I would look to the Nordic countries. They might be the first to, you know, have blockchain-based elections. I personally think that's a great direction. I did a little bit of research. I asked some people I know, and I didn't get very far in my research before other matters pulled me away. But again, for the person who asked that question, you know, I would urge you to set some goals and get the answer and let me know what you find out, because I'm very interested in that. But I didn't make much progress beyond the startup in Norway that I did contact, and they were making some progress, but I don't know if they've deployed and actually done it at what scale. I'm sure there's a lot of small scale experiments out there. And on the inequality one, well, that's a big concern, because, you know, the thing that we need to do there to address that, to be proactive, I mean, you can just watch the world evolve, or you can say, hey, I don't think that's right. I think, you know, we should make sure everybody has access to AI. Well, the good news is, you know, a lot of people have access to smartphones. Even if an individual doesn't have the smartphone, sometimes a village will have a smartphone, or the village smartphone. So I think, you know, we want to think about a project, an open source project that would put an open source AI assistant on a smartphone. And Stanford has a project that does that. It's called the Allman Project, like the little nut. I think, you know, you're familiar with the almond nut. Anyway, the name of the project is called the Allman Project Stanford. If you go on the web and you search for Stanford Allman personal assistant, it's an open source project. I'm trying to get them to move that into the Linux Foundation, where we can have a bigger collaboration. But I think the best thing we can do for equality of AI is to have an open source AI that runs on your smartphone that we all have, and that we're all working to improve its capabilities. And open source is a great way to democratize a technology so that everybody has equal access to it. But you're right, if people don't have energy or don't have a smartphone, the gap could get bigger. And that's why I think it's so important we set goals like the UN has on sustainable development goals to address, you know, fundamental issues of poverty and things like that. Your generation, I'm 65, so I'll be in my rocking chair on the porch soon. But if you all who've asked these questions take it not just as a question, but as a personal mission, that you're going to learn about it and encourage the solution in the direction you think is the right one, that's what I would encourage you to do.
Dr. Spohrer, yeah, we are out of time right now, and we would like to thank you very much on behalf of the PICMET University and Global Leadership Forum for your kind participation in the forum with your really beautiful and very informative lecture. We have learned a lot today, and it is always very nice to listen to very intelligent people and answering your questions that really at your heart right now, and that really concerns our life. And we would like to thank you and wish you all the best in your future projects, and also wish all the best to the company IBM, and in your all your future endeavors as well. Thank you very much.
Thank
Dr.
you
Spohrer,
all.
let me join my colleague Alma by sincerely thank you for such a great talk and for, quickly solving out technical issue. I apologize for that again. And,
No worries.
there are a lot of questions, and there are many students who are already asking, and not only in this chat, we have our other chats from classes, and they're all asking some questions. And we would love you to have in person one day in Almaty. So please accept it as an invitation to visit our university. If it happens to you to be in this part of the world, you will see what beautiful city Almaty is, and what a great university we are, and what kind of nice and great people here. And we would love to see you here and to welcome you here. Thank you so much, and all the best to you and your loved ones and your family. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye. Have a good
Thank you
rest
very
of your
much.
evening. Thank you. I'll send you the recording and the chat, other material. Bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.